Hi, my name's Teresa. I'm the owner of New Forest Sewing Studio. So each month we do a monthly make just to sew along, just to see if we can help someone with their sewing or if it's of interest to anyone. So this month we're going to make the Adelaide Woven Jacket the Adelaide Woven Jacket by Style-Arc. So that's this one here. So we're going to make a, I think it shows you on the front actually, the one we're going to do, but there is one to do a white bound edge there. So the instructions, if you know Style-Arc, the instructions are very sparse. That's there, and a little bit of information on there, but that's your instructions. So they are quite sparse, but the jacket does come together quite well. It's quite basic. So I'm going to make the jacket out of our quilted Indian cotton, quilted, double-sided quilted fabric. So I've cut my pieces out, which I'll explain to you, and then I'm going to bind the edges just with some black cotton binding around the front edge and cuffs, sleeve hems. So my pattern pieces, because I want to make it so potentially the jacket will be reversible, so what I've decided I want to do is to sort of bind and flat fell seam the inside seams. So it's got a 1 centimetre seam allowance throughout the pattern. So if I'm going to be doing a flat felled seam, binding a flat felled seam on the inside seams, I have added a 1 centimetre seam allowance. So on the front here, I've just added, I'll arrow it down, you can't see, can you? Let's have a look. So on the, this is the front pieces, and I've just kept the seam allowance the same around the neckline and down the front and along the bottom, because I'll be binding that with my bias binding. Along the shoulder seam, the arm side seam and the side seam, I've added a 1 centimetre seam allowance. So that's making my seam allowance now 2 centimetres. 1 centimetre before, I've just added another centimetre to it. So I'll have a 2 centimetre seam allowance on all my inside seams, which I'll explain why as we go along. So on the back piece, it does have a centre back seam, which I've decided to keep. Doesn't mean you've got to pattern match it best you can, but I've decided to keep it because it's quite a boxy jacket and it'll help to give it some structure, I think. So I've decided to keep that. So I have added a 1 centimetre seam allowance onto there in order to seam it for the inside, and again on the shoulder seam and down the front there, but left the hem and the neckline without adding. Now if you didn't want to have a centre back seam that it has, all you need to do is to, it's got a 1 centimetre seam allowance there, you just need to fold that back, get rid of your seam allowance basically, and then just cut your piece on the fold, and then you could do without that. So I've added to it because I want to do my seam, but you could, if you wanted to, just take the pattern piece like that, fold, get rid of effectively, it's got your seam allowance marked on there, so it's very easy. Just fold that back, and then you would just cut that on the fold of your fabric, and then you wouldn't have to have a centre back seam. So that's the options for those. And then on my sleeve, it's a 2-piece sleeve, and I have again allowed extra along the sides, the seams, sleeve seams, and also along the arm side seam, but not along the hem because I'm going to bind that. So that's my pieces I've all cut out. First thing first is to put the two back pieces together, I think. As I say, the instructions are very sparse, but it's quite, I probably don't really need the instructions. I'm quite an experienced sewer, so that's fine with me. So we'll just put those two pieces together, right sides together. I might get some clips for this rather than pins actually, so I'll just put that briefly there and there. It's quite thick to pin through otherwise. I'll get some clips. For the fabric. So I'm just going to sew down the back there, 2 centimetre seam allowance, and then I'll show you how I'm going to flat fell the seam. The other thing is to use a walking foot. I'll just get my walking foot and show you what that looks like. So, so this is a walking foot. Okay, some people call it a quilting foot, but it this bit here evenly feeds your fabric through in conjunction with your feed dogs. So this bit here grips the top fabric, your feed dogs in your machine grip the lower fabric. So when you've got lots of layers like this together, it'll feed it through evenly, so your fabric won't sort of travel along and go at the wrong, you know, be misaligned or anything. So so I'm going to fit that to my machine, sew that centre back seam, and then I'll explain to you how I'm going to sort of flat fell it to cover those seams in inside. So I've stitched that seam together down the back there. Then I've reduced the lower, if you open it up like that, I've reduced the lower seam down to about 1 centimetre, this side seam down to about 1 centimetre, and then this side of the seam I've unpicked the quilting stitches, which didn't take very long actually. It's comes out really easily. It's not densely quilted, it's sort of squares like so it didn't take long. Unpicked the quilting bit on there, trimmed down that side of the quilting, so it's quite densely quilted, so I've trimmed off that side. Okay, so it's lovely and lovely soft quilting, and then I've got just the cotton on this side then once I've taken the quilting off. So I'm just folding that over under there, and I will stitch down that side, so to like flat fell the seam basically. But I've tried to move, but it's just removing some of the bulk of the wadding first. You couldn't do it with, well you could, but it'd be very, very bulky. It'd be very difficult to do it with the wadding all intact. But then I can stitch that down there and it leaves a nice self flat fell bound seam. So that's what I'll do next, and then I think we'll join the shoulders together, and then we can put the sleeves in. Put the sleeves together and then put the sleeves in, because the sleeves are 2 parts. So I'll go and bind this first, and then we'll attach the sleeves, the shoulder seams. Okay, so that's my seam down the back there. Ooh. Ooh, a bit of thread there loose. Sort that out in a minute. That's part of the quilting. So I've got that's my seam down the back there, so that's the right side, and then that's the wrong side. So yeah, I've just top stitched it. So I've stitched it from this, the top side, that side underneath, so I could see where I was folding the binding. I've used the red thread in the top and a black thread for the bobbin, just to match in with that side. So that's what I've done. So next we'll do the 2 shoulder seams. So we just want to join that one to that one and that one to that one at the shoulder seams. Really fill up because it's quite thick with the wadding. I'm just going to use these clips, these wonder clips, so they do make things a bit easier. So just put that like that. So again, we're going to do a 2 centimetre seam allowance along both these shoulder seams, and then we're going to trim down the seam as we've done for the back and flat fill the seam again so that it's all nicely sort of bound in. So I'll show you a bit more actually on the other one, how I did that, how I unpicked it. In case that's not clear, I'll show you in one of these. Okay, so I'm going to stitch those and then we'll do the seams again. I'll show you how I cut it and unpick it to do one of those. Okay, I'll be back shortly. Okay, so I've done, where are we? Done one shoulder seam there. Like so. Okay, so I'll show you how we do it. So I'm going to use this seam to flat fell over that way. So I'm going to use this side. So this is the side I'm going to just unpick within the seam allowance. I've just unpicked. So it's quite easy to do, just as you would, I'm sure you've sew as you can all unpick. Part of sewing, isn't it? So yeah, just catch those threads, take those off, and just make sure you've got your, get rid of your bit of your thread from the other side. Snip that up there. Okay, so then that's your seam like that. Okay, so because it's 2 centimetres, I'm just going to cut this side, the back side, down to 1 centimetre. Difficult to show you on the screen. Turn it round a bit, see if you can see it a bit better. So I'm just going to trim that down. So just take about 1 centimetre off. Just like that. So that's the side that we haven't unpicked, and then the side that we have unpicked, you just pull your bit of thin fabric away from the wadding, like so. Stitch left in the bottom there. There we go. And then just get your fingers between the two, and then trim down about 0.5 centimetre, close as you can along there. Try not to catch in your other seam. So I've got my fingers between the other, this seam and the other seam as I cut it. Just trying to get rid of some of that bulk. In order to pin it over. Where am I going? Feel it with your fingers underneath. There we go, and that's that bit off. Okay, then we can give it a good press, and what we're going to do is fold it over that way, and then this seam will just fold under there. The fabric will fold under. Okay, so that's as it is now. Okay, and you will just fold that across that way, and then that will fold under there, binding in the seam, and then we're just going to stitch along the edge, this edge of your binding here. Yeah, so we stitch that in place. Let me hold that up so I can show you a bit better on this one. So there we've folded it over to underneath, and then we've just stitched down along that edge of the binding. So then it gives you that finish on the outside. As I said, I put black thread in the bobbin because I've got more black on that side. Okay, so I'm going to go and just press this over. So just press it so that it sits nicely over flat that way, and then you can tuck it under and stitch along there. So we'll do that, and then we'll put the two, join the sleeves together because it's a two-piece sleeve. So we'll do that next. Okay, so joining the sleeves together, it just says, your instructions just say join the sleeves together. But then you do have a picture here in the Style-Arc patterns. So if you look, these are your two sleeve pieces here. So just this is how it's all put together. So looking at these sleeve pieces, you want to join the edges together of piece, well, 4 and 5, but I don't think they're even numbered. No, they're not numbered, yeah, just your two sleeve pieces. So you need to look for the piece, to join the two pieces together that have got the double notch on. Just see that double notch down, oh, can't see, down here. Okay, so it's those two, it's the side with the double notch on, because there's one side of your sleeve pieces as a single notch, and the other side of your sleeve pieces as a double notch. So it's the double notch seam that needs to be joined together. So that's shown on here on your pattern. Okay. Where are we? There. Okay, and again on your other sleeve piece there. Okay, so we just find those on our pattern. So there's my double notch there. Let's just pin these together somewhere. There we are. My double notch there, and then that's the double notch there, so that one needs to line up with that side. So those two together there, so pin those in place. It's easy to get your sleeve up the right way round because you can't you can't fit it the other way with your notches. So as long as you've got those in place, you'll be able to line it all up. So we'll just pin those together, and we're going to sew these seams the same as we have before, flat thread in the seam. Then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with the other one. I think to flat fill the other one, I may have to hand stitch it, hand bind it, because I'm going to struggle to get my machine up inside there later. We will see. Right. So I'm going to stitch those, again a 2 centimetre seam allowance because I added the centimetre on to do my flat fill seams. So I'm going to do that on both the sleeves and finish the seams off like we have been. And then we don't sew the rest of the sleeve together yet, we then insert the sleeve flat into the jacket. So we'll do that next. I'll just do these 2 seams first. Okay. Oh, I've got so many pairs of scissors. Right, okay, so the next bit is to put the sleeve we've sewn together, okay, onto the jacket. So you fold it out like that so that you've got your sleeve piece here. So that's the front and that's the back. Those out of the way. Right, so that's the front, okay, and that's the back piece. So you want your seam, so your undersleeve bit, which is where you've got the smaller section of your jacket goes towards the back, okay, and then the bigger sleeve piece goes towards the front. Now in the centre you'll have a notch in the centre of your sleeve, and that you line up with the shoulder seam. I'll just put that in place there. So that's lined up with the shoulder seam, and then you've got a slight curve in the edge there, which on your pattern piece is this bit here, okay, so just that piece there, a very slight curve, and that's where the edge of your sleeve comes to. So you just need to find that again, that's it, up that there. And then just make sure you've got, if there's any ease to get in, there's only a tiny bit really, just to join it in the middle, and then again in between. In between there. Oops. Keeps alive. This one, join the up to again that slightly curved, where it starts to curve on your side seam, which is the edge of your arm side, that one there, and then just get the centre bit here. And where you've got a notch in your arm side bit is where your underarm seam there joins. And there. Come on there. So I'm going to sew that again. So I did add my seam allowance to this to flat fill the seams again. So again, I'm going to do a 2 cm seam allowance, and then flat fill the seam to bind it over. Okay, so I'm going to do that on both the sleeves, and then next we're going to join the fronts to the backs like so. Okay, then we're going to join this seam here, which joins the whole jacket up, and then it'll just be the binding around the edge. So I'll do these sleeves first and flat fill them, because I'm going to see how flat filling them is going to affect this bit here. So we'll do that first, and I'll explain what I've done. Okay, so that's the sleeves sewn in along there, and that's it on the right side. Okay, so I decided to, I used, oh, sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze, it's gone. I used the seam allowance from the sleeve to fold up and over towards the top. So I allowed the sleeve seam allowance from the sleeve bit here, okay, to fold over round to the flat fill it under the edge here, onto the back and front where it joins. So that's all done. So next we just need to join it together at the side and underarm seams. So right sides together, like a big puzzle. There we go, like so. So first of all, if you join your seam here, I might just need to snip that bit from the wall. I think I got it. That's it, like so. One there. Join it at the cuff. Oops. In the middle there. Oop. And then down this side here. So So I'm going to do that on both sides. Again, I put an extra seam allowance on in order to flat fill the seam. So for me, it's a 2 centimetre seam allowance. I'm going to sew all the way around there. Okay, one more in there. Okay, so that's very well. So that's I'm going to sew up there and down there. Do that both sides. And I'm going to see if I can, I'm going to flat fill the seam. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to machine stitch all the way down. Sometimes you can with a sleeve, but it might be difficult because it's quilted. So I might have to, down that sleeve edge, hand sew the seam flat filled over, binded over. So I'm going to sew those 2 sides first and see how I get on with that. Okay, and then next we'll do the binding around the outer edge. So that's the underarm seam all sewn in. I did just about manage to flat fill it, but I managed to get so far down the sleeve one way and then from the cuff up to meet it. So I have got a little join here. It doesn't particularly show, so I did manage to flat fill that so that when I could have hand stitched it otherwise. I might do next time, but yeah, they're all flat filled, so you can then make it reversible. So the next thing to do is just to put the bias binding on. Let's get some of this out of the shop. So I'm going to just put that on here. So I'll start at the back of the neck, I think, and then just work my way all the way around. Obviously I need to do a mitered corner here, at the corner there, and then all the way around, another mitered corner at the bottom there. So I'll have to remember how to do those. I'm not a quilter, so I'll have to have a look at that. So first of all, I'm going to fold my edge over like that. Okay, my edge of my tape over, press that over, like so. So you've just got a neat edge to the end of your binding, and then when you come back round the other side, you can just tuck the edge into it so that it's nice and neat. So I'll just press that, and then I'll stitch the binding round. So I'll probably have to do that a bit later. I've got a class in a minute, so yeah, so we will do that a bit later. Okay. So we've I've sewn the bias binding, well, part sewn it around. I just need to trim off that end, that's too long. So I've sewn the bias binding all the way round, so the unneatened edge will fold under the neatened edge, like that. Okay, so I've stitched it all the way round, mitered my corners, quite proud of those, and I'm decided I'm gonna turn it over. I could machine stitch around, but actually I'm just going to go and hand stitch around those because I think it'll be a lot neater finish. I think it's worth it on this jacket. So I've also done the buttonholes ready there. It just showed 2 on the jacket, but I decided to put one up at the top as well, so I just evenly spaced them there. So I've got 3 buttonholes. It's just I know I want to do it up at the top, and I've also got the bias binding sewn on, machine sewn on around the cuffs. So again, I'm just going to fold that over and then just hand stitch in place around the inside there. So I'm just going to do that and put my buttons on, and then we'll be completed. So I'm going to go and hand stitch those, probably in front of the fire with a glass of wine, I expect. So I'm going to go and do that, and then in the morning I'll see if I can get some photos of it all finished. Okay, so this is our sew along for the month of November at New Forest Sewing Studio. We made the Style-Arc Adelaide Woven Jacket in our quilted fabric. So this is the jacket. I did it, seamed it inside, flat fell seamed it inside, so I'll show you it is reversible. She says, oh, it's cold. Although I haven't yet put buttons on the other side yet, but I could do if I wanted to use the buttons on the other, if I wanted to wear it the other way round. So that's it the other way. Fold up the cuffs back in reverse. Other way round. As I say, at the moment I haven't put buttons on the reverse, but I could, but if I think I'm going to wear it in the other way, then I'll put some buttons on that side as well.